The email arrived on a Tuesday morning, just as I was reviewing quarterly projections for Chin Industries. The subject line was simple: family emergency meeting attendance mandatory. I almost laughed at the word mandatory, as if they still had any authority over my schedule. So I was curious. After 2 years of minimal contact, what could be so urgent? The timestamp showed Dad had sent it at 3 a.m. Interesting. The great Michael Chin, CEO of Chin Global Solutions, losing sleep. Perhaps he'd finally noticed the pattern in his company's declining numbers. My brother Kevin's social media had been suspiciously quiet lately too. No more posts about his natural leadership, or photos from the corner office that should have been mine. My phone buzzed, a text from my assistant. Marshall Brothers just signed. You now own 51% of their shares. Perfect timing. I typed a quick reply to Dad's email. I'll be there. Also bringing my team to discuss some recent acquisitions. Let them think I was still running my cute little consulting firm, the one they dismissed as my backup plan when Kevin got the company. The Chin family estate looked exactly the same as I drove up that evening. Imposing gates, manicured lawns, and that pretentious fountain Dad had installed when he made his first million. My Tesla Model South looked out of place among the Bentleys and Rolls-Royces. They probably assumed I couldn't afford better. If they'd bothered to check, they'd know I could buy their entire car collection with my monthly dividend payments. Mom opened the door, her smile too bright to be genuine. Alexandra, we weren't sure you'd come. And miss a mandatory meeting? When Dad's calling everyone at 3 a.m. Kept my tone light. Wouldn't dream of it. The family was gathered in Dad's study, that sacred space where he told me 2 years ago that I lacked the killer instinct to run Chin Global. Kevin sat in what used to be Dad's chair, trying to look confident despite the dark circles under his eyes. Dad stood by the window, staring at the city skyline where Chin Global's headquarters used to dominate the view. Used to because the building now sat in the shadow of my company's new tower. Shall we begin? I asked, taking a seat across from Kevin. I have another meeting at 8. Always busy with your little consulting work, Mom said with forced cheerfulness. I didn't correct her assumption. Let them think I was still finding my way after being passed over. We're here, Dad began, his voice lacking its usual authority, because Chin Global is facing some challenges. Challenges? I opened my laptop. Like losing Marshall Brothers? Your biggest client for the past decade. Kevin's head snapped up. How did you know? It's public knowledge now. Their board announced the change in management this morning. I pulled up the press release. Marshall Brothers, under new ownership, has terminated all contracts with Chin Global Solutions. New ownership? Mom looked confused. Some investment group, Kevin said dismissively, but his voice cracked slightly. We'll win them back. Finalizing Holdings, I provided helpfully. They've been acquiring a lot of companies lately, including most of your other major clients. Dad's fingers tightened on his whiskey glass. You seem well informed. I try to keep up with market trends. I checked my phone again. Oh look, Chin Global stock just dropped another 15%. Amazing how fast news travels. This is serious, Alexandra, Dad snapped. The company, our family legacy, is at risk. Our legacy? I raised an eyebrow. I thought I wasn't good enough to be part of that legacy. What was it you said? I lacked the killer instinct? Kevin shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Look sis, we need to work together here. Maybe your consulting firm could help us identify. My consulting firm? I smiled, pulling out a business card. Oh, I haven't done consulting work in almost 2 years. I've been a bit busy. I slid the card across the desk. Kevin picked it up, his face going pale as he read. Alexandra Chin, CEO and founder. Finalizing Holdings. The silence in the study was absolute. Kevin stared at my business card like it might bite him. Mom's perfect socialite composure cracked for the first time in years. And Dad looked like he'd seen a ghost. Finalizing. He whispered. The company that's been systematically acquiring your client base, outbidding you on every major contract, poaching your top executives. I leaned back in my chair. Guilty as charged. Kevin's face shifted from pale to red. This is impossible. Finalizing is worth billions. They have offices in 12 countries. 15 now, actually. We just opened in Singapore, Dubai and Sao Paulo. I pulled up my company's latest quarterly report on my laptop. Would you like to see the numbers? They're quite impressive. You're bluffing, Dad declared, but his voice lacked conviction. This is some kind of trick. I projected my screen onto the study's wall display, a habit from countless board meetings. The Phoenix Rising portfolio filled the wall. Dozens of companies, thousands of employees, and a market cap that made Chin Global look like a corner store. Remember Wilson Tech? Your second biggest client until 6 months ago. I highlighted their acquisition details. They practically begged to join us after seeing our innovation pipeline. And Martinez International? They signed with us the day after Kevin's stellar presentation, the one you bragged about at Mom's garden party. Mom sank into a chair. But your little office downtown is a deliberate front. My real headquarters is that new building casting a shadow on Chin Global. I smiled. The one Kevin called some upstart trying to show off last month. Why? Dad demanded. If you had this kind of capability, why pretend? To be struggling? To be the daughter you could safely ignore? I pulled up more data. Because watching you celebrate Kevin's natural business instincts while I quietly built an empire was enlightening. Kevin was frantically scrolling through Phoenix Rising's public records on his phone. This can't. When did you start? The day after you got my job. I began counting off on my fingers. Remember Sarah from marketing? The one you fired because she wasn't aggressive enough? She's now my global marketing director. Tom from R&D, who Dad said lacked vision? Chief Innovation Officer. Every person you underestimated, every idea you dismissed, I gave them a home at Phoenix Rising. You're destroying our company, Kevin accused. No, brother dear. You did that all by yourself. I showed them Chin Global's declining metrics. Every bad decision, every missed opportunity, every client you took for granted, I just provided them with a better alternative. Dad's business instincts finally kicked in. We can work something out. A merger. A merger. I laughed. Dad, Phoenix Rising could buy Chin Global with what we spend on office supplies. But that would be... I paused, savoring the moment, lacking in killer instinct. The irony wasn't lost on any of them. What do you want? Dad asked, his voice hoarse. Want? I have everything I want. I gestured to the display showing my company's global reach. The real question is, what do you have left? The following weeks were a masterclass in corporate dominoes. Chin Global's stock continued its nosedive as news of Marshall Brothers' departure spread through the business world. Each day brought new revelations about Phoenix Rising's strategic acquisitions. Kevin's attempts to salvage the situation were almost painful to watch. He called an emergency board meeting, only to discover that 3 of his board members had quietly accepted positions with Phoenix Rising subsidiaries months ago. Your sister's quite impressive, one of them told him on their way out. She actually reads the reports we submit. Dad tried to leverage his old business connections, only to find that most of them were already in talks with Phoenix Rising. The country club became awkward territory as his peers suddenly remembered urgent meetings whenever he approached. Mom's social circle was equally devastating. At her beloved charity gala, she overheard Mrs. Richardson, her best friend of 20 years, gushing about that brilliant Alexandra Chin and her company's generous philanthropic initiatives. Did you know Phoenix Rising built 3 children's hospitals in developing countries last year? Mrs. Richardson asked pointedly. Such vision. Such leadership. The final blow came during Chin Global's annual shareholders meeting. Kevin stood at the podium, trying to project confidence as he presented their recovery strategy. I sat in the back watching him stumble through explanations of their 60% revenue drop. Then right on cue my phone buzzed. Excuse me, I said, standing up. But I believe this might be relevant to the discussion. I walked to the front, every eye in the room following me. The whispers had already started. Everyone knew who I was now. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, as CEO of Phoenix Rising Holdings, I'm pleased to announce our latest acquisition. I paused, letting the tension build. We've just purchased the Anderson Group. The room erupted. Anderson Group was Chin Global's last major client, their final lifeline. Kevin gripped the podium. That's not They wouldn't. I projected the signed contracts onto the screen behind him. They would, and they did. Unanimously approved by their board 10 minutes ago. Dad stood up from his front row seat. This is corporate sabotage. No, Dad. This is business. I turned to face the shareholders. Your CEO dismissed Anderson's concerns about outdated technology. My company offered solutions. He ignored their requests for digital transformation. We presented a comprehensive plan. This isn't sabotage, it's competition. The shareholders' faces showed a mix of shock and dawning realization. Their investment was circling the drain, while Finalizing's stock hit new highs daily. Now, I continued, I understand you have some concerns about Chin Global's future. I'd be happy to discuss Finalizing's tender offer for any shares you wish to sell. The exodus began immediately. Shareholders lined up to get my card, schedule meetings, explore their options. Kevin stood forgotten at his podium watching his company dissolve in real time. Mom approached me as the room cleared. Was this your plan all along? To destroy what your father built? No, Mom. My plan was to build something better. I showed her Finalizing's latest initiative, a global innovation fund for overlooked entrepreneurs. Dad taught me an important lesson when he gave the company to Kevin. He showed me exactly what kind of leader I didn't want to be. Later that evening, as Chin Global's stock hit an all-time low, I sat in my actual office, the top floor of Finalizing Tower. The view showed the city's transformation. New buildings, new companies, new opportunities. Chin Global's old headquarters looked small and dated in comparison. My phone buzzed with a text from Kevin. Can we talk? I responded with a screenshot of Chin Global's final trading price, followed by Finalizing's soaring numbers. We are talking, I wrote. The market's doing all the speaking necessary. Dad's message came an hour later. I was wrong. Yes, I replied, you were. About business, about leadership, and about me. But thanks for the motivation. I couldn't have built Finalizing without your rejection. The next morning, as Chin Global announced its bankruptcy filing, I called a meeting of my executive team, that collection of not good enough people who'd helped build Finalizing into a powerhouse. Should we consider acquiring Chin Global's assets? My CFO asked. They'll be going cheap. No, I smiled, looking out at my empire. Let them keep their legacy. We're too busy building our own. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying what others built. It's building something so much better that they destroy themselves trying to compete. 6 months after Chin Global's bankruptcy filing, I received an invitation that made me laugh out loud. The annual Business Leadership Awards wanted me as their keynote speaker. The irony? Last year they'd given Dad the Lifetime Achievement Award, with Kevin accepting on his behalf because I wasn't part of the family business. I accepted, of course. Some opportunities are too perfect to pass up. The night of the ceremony, I arrived in my usual understated style, though this time my simple black dress was a one-of-a-kind creation worth more than Kevin's now repossessed Bentley. The whispers followed me through the crowd, a mix of awe and barely concealed schadenfreude. Did you hear? Chin Global's building is becoming Finalizing's new tech hub. Her brother's working in middle management at some startup. Their father hasn't been seen at the club in months. I spotted my family at their table, significantly less prominent than their usual front-and-center placement. Mom's pearls looked a bit less lustrous, Dad's suit a bit less bespoke, and well, Kevin looked like someone who'd recently learned what a regular salary feels like. The introduction began. Our keynote speaker tonight built a global empire from scratch in just 2 years. Her company, Finalizing Holdings, has revolutionized multiple industries and set new standards for corporate innovation. Please welcome Alexandra Chin, CEO of the Year. The applause was thunderous. I took the stage, noting how Dad couldn't quite meet my eyes. Thank you, I began. 2 years ago I sat in this very room and heard something interesting. A prominent business leader said that success comes from having the killer instinct. That some people are born leaders while others aren't. The audience shifted uncomfortably. Everyone knew who I was quoting. He was right about one thing: success does require instinct. But not for killing. It requires an instinct for building. For seeing potential where others see limitations. For turning rejection into rocket fuel. I gestured to the screens behind me, which displayed Phoenix Rising's global impact. The innovation centers, the mentorship programs, the sustainable development initiatives. When I started Phoenix Rising, people asked why I chose that name. The answer is simple. Sometimes you need to burn down your old self to build something better. Sometimes the flames of rejection forge the strongest foundations.